Topic today is the case for the Creator 2. The cosmos seems to have a purpose, and humans may be special. I wanted to start out just saying that this is let's call it a bold claim compared to the standard thinking of many name brand scientists is right now. Okay. In the last talk, I did a close quote of Steven Weinberg, a tremendous Nobel Prize winning physicist, who said that the more we learn about the universe, the more it seems pointless. Okay? And so that seems to be a point of view that's widely shared among a certain sophisticated scientific crowd, right? And if the universe is pointless, then I would say that that would be a great justification for nihilism. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, on the point of everybody. So let's hope it's not pointless. It's my point of view. Okay? And that humans may be special. Okay, so also what I'll call a bold claim, in that popular science right now, leading opinions, would be that, well, let me just again cite Stephen Hawking, who said that all of life, not even humans, but life is a chemical smudge on the third rock from a very insignificant star. You know, hard to get a lot of meaning and purpose out of that. And certainly if we talk about humans being important, then modern approaches might say, oh, excuse me.
I apologize, we have a visitor from George Washington Everett who would like to sit in.
Okay, fine. Make yourself at home. Okay, so that we have folks who will tell us that if we say that humans are special, that we're speciest, right? Why are we privileging one species over another? Okay. And that one other fellow, I don't know his credentials exactly, but he was saying that the humans are barely evolved apes. There's not that much to pick and choose between humans and apes. So I just wanted to alert you that this is a controversial topic, less useful as it becomes more disorganized. Okay, so universe winding down. However, there's a strong sub-theme of the increase of creative activity building more complexity in a world that's winding down, which I think needs to be explained. And so I identified several specific means that are in place to support creating structure in the universe, to include the unexplained fact that energy has a matter aspect to it, that you can take a lot of energy and turn it into matter, and vice versa, okay? The universe, I don't think, had to be like that. Another thing that didn't have to be there is gravity, perhaps drawing matter together, right? And molecular chemistry, which I refer to as the atoms trying to join together to have complete so-called outer shells of their electrons, which I compared to Lego bricks. Okay? So let's say there's 92 atoms out there, but forming compounds, they have millions of compounds, and together making these molecular compounds can make everything we see, experience, and have physical touch of in the world. Okay. So that just from a very limited set of building blocks, we can get huge diversity and complexity out of that. And again, I'd say, did it have to be that way? I would say no. And so I say it has to be explained. But I'm suggesting that the act of creation is continuing. Act of creation because of internal controls that were set up before time began, actually, okay? And that are playing out now. Okay, and that in addition to having matter, which gives you something to construct complexity out of, and these other tendencies, because there's the so-called Big Bang, the world is made up of a heat engine whereby hotter and more energetic materials coming from one area to another are able to do work in the process, right? And so that provides a means or a motive force to help build complexity. Okay. So I'm saying there are certain factors built into the creation that didn't have to be there, that then go toward what I'm saying is a continuing act of creation, which humans are a part of, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Okay. Well, then in addition, I mentioned that there are certain values in physics, physical constants, the relationship of different weights to one another, different speeds, the speed of light. They're all extremely fine-tuned. And so I'm putting that forward as, I would call it evidence that the world is not an accident, and that what we see with the fine-tuning, scientists were saying that, well, maybe it's just the result of fantastic random chance, which I compared to winning the Powerball 5 times in a row with a fair draw, which was conservative. However, it's very conducive to the concept of having a supreme being who, as Fred Hoyle put it, a super intellect who monkeyed with the laws of physics. Okay, so that's where we've been, and thought I'd just carry on today. Okay, so wanted to start by talking about the fact of there's a Harvard professor named Eric Chasen, who talks about the fact that the entire cosmos is evolving, and he has several different stages of the cosmos evolving, which he calls particulate, galactic, stellar, planetary, chemical, biological, culture, and the future. And each one of these, he separates into a different period, which then he says the universe as a whole is evolving. Okay. And one of the things that he noted about this, which is kind of fascinating, is that he could develop a relationship among the energy usage of all the different phases across eons, across different epochs, across different modalities. So he has a measure that here we can see it. It looks like a power law of being able to use energy, okay? And that all stars, planets, plants, humans, brains, and societies are progressively more complex. And as they become more complex, they're both able and need to process more energy. And that he can measure it, and that the data that falls out from it shows a central tendency, okay? Statisticians love it when they can find data with a central tendency. And if you can find it going over the course of 13 billion years across different scenarios, it makes one stop and take notice. And we'll talk more about it. Okay, let me get into that a little more. This is a little more detail on it. So he's talking about the fact that galaxies use more energy, or whatever, process more energy with dark galaxies, mature galaxies, current galaxies, stars going up. He's measuring this in ergs per grams per second. In case you want to know, ergs is just a science term for measuring energy, okay? Here he's talking about protists, which are like protozoa or something very small. It was going to become either a plant or an animal. Gymnosperms, angiosperms, and C4 plants, in case you can't read it there. But again, using different amounts of energy, which I'll go into in just a minute. I'll read it for people who have trouble seeing it, which is most everybody. But then the animals, the fact that fish and amphibians use less energy than reptiles, mammals, and birds, right? Humans becoming more industrialized have a tendency to utilize more energy, and society, of course, goes way up from there. Okay. Sir?
The galaxies and stars one, does that contradict the so-called peak death of the universe?
Well, right. So this would be the contrary, minor but important tendency going against the heat death, major story of entropy, right? So the major story is that the universe is winding down energy-wise. However, from the Big Bang, there's a tremendous amount of space gas, right? Hydrogen and helium, which goes out and then coalesces due to gravity and forms galaxies and then stars. And it forms stars because when you have enough mass and gravity and the pressure and temperature mount up so that you start to do nuclear fusion. Okay? So that through all this, you have an important critical subtendency of matter building up as the heat of the Big Bang does work. It performs work while it's then on its way to dissipation in the heat sink of the outer universe. Okay, so let's see. We've got a few more specifics. Sorry. Let's go to this one. So that in this one, we're talking a little, so again, apologize. Supposedly for every formula you put in, you lose half your audience. So you all are brave. Okay. So anyway, stars are about 2 in that, and I'll try to touch on this and explain it. Don't know how much time I want to spend on it. But his measurement, this is again, Chasen at Harvard, the luminosity measured in ergs is 4 times 10 to the 33rd. The mass is 2 times 10 to the 33rd grams, right? So that if you divide that, you get 2, okay? So again, just an all-purpose number. We're going to go down here and say that other things generate then a number instead of 2, 75, 920,000, 150,000, right? Because we saw that on the curve that it starts to go straight up, or practically straight up, exponentially. Okay. Planets. Okay, here he's measuring what we would talk about for climate. So he's talking about wind currents, wind flow, sea currents, and heat from the and movement in the atmosphere and upper ocean. Plants, thought this is interesting, 0.1% of the sun's energy, creating 10 billion tons a year. Okay? So he's able to do the homework or have his graduate students do the homework and figure this out. Humans, again, 2,800 kilocalories per day, 70 kilogram male. Brains, okay, so brains are only 2% of the human mass, but use 20% of the energy, okay? So ordinarily, evolutionarily, this wouldn't make sense because brains didn't make a big difference, according to me, for humans until they developed. So there seems to be less natural tendency to form brains for their particular value that they would give somebody a survival factor. Sir?
Sorry, so on this list you have here, are these units notional or are they actual measures?
So these would be actual measures of the ergs, the seconds, and the grams. Ergs per second per gram. And then, but then they give you this number, which, you know, just is the rate. Okay. Okay. So one interesting thing about this is that, again, this seems to fly in the face of entropy. Okay. However, I think of it, you know, the bank of entropy. It gives you a loan, of some energy to make something creative, but then once you make it, you actually increase entropy, right? So that if we imagine, a teenager with a V8 Ford, he's going to use an awful lot of energy, yeah? Okay, so that even though I've talked about the fact of the major tendency being for the world winding down, and the important subtendency of building up also over time reinforces the major tendency, which is to break down energy and dissipate it. All good fun. Okay, so I'm drawing, let's say, or I intend to draw, a philosophical religious conclusion from this, right? That to me, I'm seeing a central tendency here with the data, and I'm saying that indicates that there appears to be a purpose, right? So that this important subtendency may be, if we consider a creator, the point that the creator was trying to make. He's trying to create something. He's made an initial creation. The creation is continuing. There's some purposive behavior evidenced by that, according to me, because of the fact that there's a central tendency in the data showing a building up of complexity as measured by the expenditure of energy per second per gram. Okay. Chasen doesn't draw those kind of conclusions from it, and I am doing that. So that's kind of the difference, and he's a name brand scientist, and I'm not. So fair warning. Miss. He reports. He reports. But he has a number of great works on cosmic evolution. He goes through it. He goes into depth. He has some which are, in the view graph, we see, so you can go to his website, you can go to his book, and then he said he's going to take a break from popularizing and do some stuff for real astrophysicists. Okay, so that's been there for a while. Okay, so let's see. So again, increasing complexity in a world winding down. Complexity and processing of energy seem to be generally positively associated, and the relationship holds up over eons, vast scales, across many different types of examples, which is one reason that complexity is then measured by the energy rate density, right? The energy rate density, okay? As opposed to saying he's building up this kind of structure or that kind of structure, okay? And so for me, I'm saying we're on to something examining this relationship. Naturalists claim the world has no purpose. However, if there's a central tendency over time and across modalities, I'm claiming it could be said to have a purpose, especially when we consider back and saying a number of these mechanisms to create complexity were built into the original design, right? To include that aspect of gravity, the aspect of energy having matter, and the aspect of the molecular building blocks. We can see that tools were in place from the beginning to help create complexity, and indeed, we now see data that shows that complexity is increasing over time and across a broad range of conditions. So I'm saying that supports my argument of the case for the creator and that the creation continuing. That's where we are. Okay. And again, I'm the minority opinion here, so take it for what it's worth. Okay, so what we do notice is that, and again, I would say the relationship appears to be consistent with a cosmic engineer who desires the complex structure and has access to the energy and skills. And because the humans are in there, and because the humans, if we consider, the knee in the curve and the takeoff of those numbers Life is important, humans are important, brains are important, society is important. If we just look at the numbers and the way, if we say that's a central tendency, and we look at the curve, we say humans are important in that curve. So again, this is what I mentioned at the beginning, that's not what a number of the popular name brand scientists think. But I'm saying that with this curve, Chasen, according to me, has indicated a way to show that humans are important in the cosmos because they exemplify a central tendency in the data. Sir?
Couldn't you imagine in this same spot 70 million years ago, a big collection of dinosaurs sitting there saying exactly the same thing?
Right, and okay. And as a matter of fact, we could imagine all these hominids who've died out, right? We're the last of the hominids, our species of sapiens. So that doesn't mean that it's going to end with us. But I would say that at the time, yeah, if they had a Tyrannosaurus Rex who was getting up and giving view graphs, he might say, see, we're the head of creation because we expend all this energy. Okay. So, okay. So I have suggested that humans having a critical spot on that trend line shows that humans can be seen as important in the universe. Okay. And we've seen that there are natural means in place that seem to have produced humans, and that the universe is a really big place with lots of opportunities for life and for something like human life to evolve or develop, right? And yet, when we turn our big telescopes and antennae all around the universe, do we find any sign of any other intelligent life? No, and we've been looking for a while. Okay, so I have, in the last slides, I've been talking about how important humans are. In this slide and the next slide, I'm going to talk about, don't get too cocky about this, right? So that then if we consider this, going back to if there's no signals, does that mean that it's harder than we thought for life to evolve? Or does that mean that intelligent beings, as they develop, gain the ability to process a lot more energy than their minds and their hearts know how to deploy usefully and destroy each other? Okay? So that we've got atomic bombs, would somebody use them? And if they did, would this wipe out society? Just throw that out as a thing. But anyway, we're not finding other entities out there. So that it's not clear then that being a human is something that's going to then be central to the point of the universe if we kill ourselves off. Sir?
They haven't found us.
Okay, so this brings up the point that some people say, well, if we have these smart aliens, maybe they're so smart that they went stealthy because they realized that if they're broadcasting in the clear, as it were, that maybe some other entities will come over and invade them or something, But that's, I thought, kind of a little bit tenuous, certainly.
I think what happened is they tried to figure out how would they make a living in here, and they wound up being in the movie industry.
Okay. Certainly if they purvey fictions, they can find a home. Okay. And then, so again, not knowing a particular thing, but just mentioning here what the view graph is. These are all different hominids at different time periods. They all died off. They all died off. We're the last, okay? And so in the fossil record, you find a lot of species that come, they're successful, and then they disappear again. So I'm just saying, I'm just noting a caveat that the fact that we're extremely successful species right now doesn't mean that continues. We could.
Even if we die off, that actually, you're saying, I think you're saying humans are special.
Yes.
We haven't gone extinct yet. We go extinct, is that one of your theory?
Oh, no, it just, okay. So, okay. So the question was, if humans go extinct, does that kill my theory? Yeah. Oh, okay. So my opinion is that the way the universe is set up, I would call it stochastic. Okay, now that's a 50-cent word. I have a couple people over here who knows what it means. I have a few over here, but it's actually from the Greek word for guess, which I thought was funny. Okay, so basically, it seems to me the way the world is developing is through chance and opportunity. Okay, chance and opportunity. So to go to your answer directly, it would be that if we kill ourselves off, the Creator would try again, is the answer that I would go to. But what does this stochastic mean? Okay, so it means that, let's take an example. Let's say that there's a big microbe, primordial microbe, that ingests a smaller microbe, okay? And instead of being digested, that smaller microbe then makes a home inside the larger microbe and actually becomes part of that microbe's machinery and turns it into a supercell. Okay, so let's say the odds of that happening are 1 in a million, just to pick a number. Okay, so if those types of activities are repeated numerous times, say 7 million times, the odds that it's going to happen are almost 100%. It's going to happen sometime. And to me, that seems to be the way the world progresses. I'll call it progressing, but further develops in that stochastically, through chance and numerous opportunities, things happen and develop. And that it's not a sure thing that any one particular path is going to work. Okay. So there was a gentleman named Duduve, D-U, capital D-U-V-E, who went into this. I recommend his stuff if you're interested in this a lot. Okay, so let me return to the view graph, okay, and just say, yeah, we're successful, but are we the answer? Not necessarily, okay? But I also wanted to point out that there are emphases towards what are called transhumanism, okay, to exceed the bounds of human limitations. And so you could think of uploading your brain to the cloud and then living like that forever. Okay, so transhumanism, to kind of make humans gods, to be able to live forever and have tremendous power. Nevertheless, okay, and so presumably transhumanism is going to be very expensive. So if some elites gained transhuman powers, what would they think of us? Would they think of us as lesser beings, somebody to be managed? So would it be a good thing? And I hold that as a question. Okay. In the past, when humans have gained great power, it sometimes has ended in catastrophe. Okay. And so I give the examples there. You know, when humans are consciously manipulating their environment, not always a good thing. So I mentioned here the dictatorship of virtue, the new Soviet man, and the final solution. Anybody recognize the dictatorship of virtue? Okay, that was the French Revolution. Robespierre. right? And then eventually the guillotine came for him, right? Okay. After he killed off about 17,000 people. Okay, so the new Soviet man, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, we're going to put up propaganda and have everybody do the right thing. Didn't work out so well. It became a Procrustean bed of the government trying to make humans do what they wanted, right? What the government wanted. And then obviously the terrible final solution, catastrophe, where they decided that some people were subhuman, and so they decided to eliminate them. Well, if you've got power, you can do that, right? In older societies, the rulers didn't have enough power to be able to really do a lot of damage comparatively. And now and in the future, they're going to be able to do it fairly directly, is my opinion. Okay, so just the advertisement, I'm just going to say, we need to be prudent, just, and sustainable, and with great power comes great responsibility. So that as we continue to be able to manipulate the world around us, right, if we let it go to our heads as humans, it's very dangerous. And we see the fact that there's no other advanced, I'll call them advanced civilizations, that we're aware of in the galaxy. Should be a lesson to us to maintain humility. What else? Okay, so I've mentioned this trend over time that we can draw a line through, a central tendency. And that's very interesting. And different mechanisms create the complexity, have been suggested that would help enable that increasing structure. Those mechanisms didn't have to be there, but they are. Their presence supports the idea that structure is a goal. However, is there a big physics mechanism that would help explain this overall activity? As a matter of fact, there is. So that if we consider David Lazar, okay, he's talking about the fact of if the universe starts with a big bang and we say that entropy has to either stay the same or increase, the world is getting bigger at a faster rate than entropy is increasing, leaving an entropy gap, which turns negative and then is creative energy. Okay. So, anyway, just don't know if I want to go into this in any detail. However, just wanted to adduce that it was there as a big physics answer of why we would have this important secondary tendency to build up structure when the overall universe is winding down. And another thing that then goes to, I would say, the evidence that it was a creator who chose to create through the Big Bang, right? Chose to create instead of the so-called static doll's house universe. Okay. So, if that contention is right, that big physics approach is right, that the Big Bang creating more space then creates negative entropy or negentropy, which then allows for creation. And this supreme being would know that, and would know that that would be a plausible way to create what that supreme being wanted to create. But if that were true, and he wanted to use that, he'd just have a couple more tasks to figure out. So I'll just mention them. How to create a Big Bang singularity. We don't know that. We don't know why the Big Bang worked the way it did. It goes back to the singularity where the laws of physics don't apply, and then all of a sudden, all the laws of physics apply. Really? Okay, well, let's just mention that. Then there's a tremendous amount of energy that you've got to put into a submicroscopic point in space. So you've got to organize all that energy. Then you have to fine-tune all those pesky physical constants. And if you remember last time I showed a chart that just showed, it's a pretty color chart, and it just showed that the little sliver in there was the only place where the constants would permit the kind of universe that we have. So that it was spectacular fine-tuning of these constants. Okay. And then, of course, you'd have to invent chemistry, including the special properties of water, carbon dioxide, and don't forget that carbon resonance that makes it plentiful. There's a resonance to the carbon atom that allows it to be in stars and be made by the triple alpha process. But anyway, you've got to get these 3 atoms to hang together long enough to make carbon, okay? And it's only because that there's a resonance at that frequency that allows them to stay together long enough to make carbon. We need carbon, okay? We're carbon-based life forms. So that if that resonance was just slightly off, no carbon, no life form. Back to the drawing board. Okay. And moving on, take care of that biology thing, including starting life, which we don't understand yet as scientists. Okay. And then contemplate humanity. Why are you doing it? What are you trying to get out of humanity? Does anybody think that's a funny picture? I got a kick out of that picture.
I don't understand why carbon dioxide is considered a poison, because without carbon dioxide, the plants don't produce the oxygen, and without the oxygen, we don't survive. So I think something's screwed here with all those intellectuals who are trying to get us to forget carbon dioxide.
Okay, well, certainly carbon dioxide has a threat on global warming, but it's also something we all have. So if you start to eliminate carbon dioxide, well, we're all producers of carbon dioxide, so we have to have, kind of an equitable view of that. However, they say that the amount makes the poison. So, yeah, so carbon dioxide is great, but we don't want too much of it. Otherwise, we're Venus. What else? What else? What else? What else? Okay, let me see. So questions remain. Why would a creator want to remain arm's length from the creation? What do I mean by that? Okay, I've said that there was an initial creation and creation is continuing, okay? And yet, if humans are important, why, let me put it this way, why is God shunning us? Why is God keeping us at arm's length?
I don't think he does.
Oh, okay, or maybe he doesn't.
You got billions of people on this planet, and you have a God that knows what's going on with every single one and does things to help and so on and so forth. And how could that be arm's length?
Okay, that's a good way to put it. Okay. But I see the time is wearing on, so I'm in the interest of time, I'm gonna roll through these a little bit. So the way I had it set up was saying, why not create in the form of a doll's house or even a garden, okay? And then somebody was going to say, well, he did create this Garden of Eden, and he walked with humans in the cool of the day, okay? And so then the answer would be, we screwed that up, right? So according to the Bible, we're saying that he tried it that way and then it didn't work. So this would be, let's call it take two. Take two, where he's using a different approach, where we are definitely east of Eden, right? We're definitely east of Eden. We're expelled from the garden now, right? and we're earning our living by the sweat of our brow. Okay, and then a dynamic universe is full of destruction, creative and otherwise, that can be incredibly painful. Why not a peaceable kingdom? You know, there's cancer and there's death, you know. Is that the way it had to be?
I saw a fantastic cartoon on the Biologos website of God on the morning of the sixth day, looking out at all the animals and saying, I've done a great job, you're all fantastic. Now I have to create somebody to eat all of them.
Okay, so that
every single animal that's created gets eaten. You never see a dead bird lying around.
well, yeah, nature is definitely into recycling. Okay, so the comment for those was that the gentleman had seen a cartoon in Biologos that God looked around on the sixth day, saw the animals, and said, "This is great. Now I need to create somebody to eat all of you." Okay, so this approach that I mentioned, this dynamic approach, then requires a great deal of time and space. Richard Feynman, a real name brand physicist, was saying, are humans important? He said, no, because the stage is too big. Says it's a huge, vast cosmos, and that humans are this itty-bitty little teeny tiny piece in it, right? However, if you have what I've previously described this hour as a stochastic approach, you need plenty of time, plenty of space, and plenty of opportunities for the world to develop. Okay? And so that's one reason I think the universe is so big and old and that there's no straight path. Okay? So in the interest of time, I had meant to lay out some of these questions. These are hard, obviously hard questions. Didn't intend to answer them today, but think about them. We may get a chance to revisit them again. Yeah, okay. So again, I guess to wrap up, my conclusion today is that last week we made the argument that the universe has a purposive creator who transcends time, space, and matter. This time we showed that there's a sustained tendency to build up complexity over time and across cosmic domains, although the universe as a whole is winding down after the Big Bang. On this line, humans could be seen as an important capstone achievement, I'd say, in an otherwise vast, cold, pitiless, and indifferent cosmos. However, humans are I'm contending that humans are held at arm's length from the Creator compared to the Eden garden. And that the open question is, why would a supreme being create in this difficult, dynamic, and distant way? And next time we'll try to at least address some of those by shifting our focus to some particular Christian perspectives and continue to speculate. What are your questions or comments? We covered a lot of ground today. You're very patient.
The arm's length, there's a thing called the Ruach Kodesh, the Holy Spirit.
Right.
And so there can be an indwelling of this Holy Spirit within us, which means that part of God is with us. And
okay,
it might not be arms length, it might not be arms around us, but they might be rolling around inside us.
But we're hearing in the Bible also the just shall live by faith and live by things that they believe rather than what they see. I'm just trying to differentiate between the things we see and the things that may well exist within us. That's what I'm trying to differentiate. What else, sir?
Yeah, Jesus seemed to think that we were going to screw it up, though. He said, I'm going to have to come back, clean the mess up you're about to make at some point. He said, I don't know when, only God the Father knows when, but you are going to screw it up.
Okay, so again, repeating the question was that Jesus seemed to know that we were going to screw it up because he's coming back. Okay, so that, Okay, so if we then consider that the earth as we know it and life as we know it, the concept of prevenient grace, that God is giving us a chance to, let's say, reform or to change our mind by the change our lives by the renewal of our minds. Okay, so that then, to your point, that would be baked in. That's what this time between the first appearance of Jesus and the next one would be, are humans going to develop in a way, or are some humans going to develop in a way that is the intent of the Holy Father? Sir.
So you want to have, some people think there's winding down, one of them. Others think it's actually that dynamic. Might this be resolved by pure physics? This is a question of physics, not theology. So it might be resolved by physics and science one day.
Okay, I didn't get it.
Yeah. One view seems to be the universe is winding down, the heat death.
Yes.
Other view seems to be your view, which is the universe is actually dynamic. Actually, I know it. That seems like a purely question of science. So
Right.
let science resolve it. If science tells you that the universe is winding down, would that be your theory?
No. Okay, because the universe is winding down, but we do a number of things, humans do a number of things that aren't forever. We go play a game of golf, we enjoy the golf game's over, we hang up the clubs. Okay, so that my point would be for this purpose, that if the Creator created the universe and the earth was in it and humans were in it, is he getting some value from the humans being there for the length of time the humans are there? Or, or the whole thing? Does he get value for what he did? And we might say this is tremendously wasteful, that there's a huge amount of energy, it's all wasted. I don't think God cares about that. He cares about the product, whatever that product is that creates value that he sees as valuable. And if others could look at it and say, well, you launched 1,000 seeds and only one plant, and you only got one plant, I don't think that bothers him at all, in my opinion. Okay, let's have this as the last question, because it seems to me we're getting towards time for church. And I look forward to seeing everybody again next week. Sir.
Well, these intellects who think that there's no purpose in the universe and so forth, but why would a guy like Stephen Hawking, with all his problems, insist he's got to stay alive and do something? Why don't they just give it up?
Well, I think that's right. And again, to repeat the comment for the crowd, why does Stephen Hawking hang in there? Why did he, if the universe is pointless? And as I mentioned last week, they think big picture, the universe is pointless, but they still want to get their grants. They want to get their kids into a good school, and Hawking, I think, deserves a lot of credit. And he's done a lot in this whole area, even though he seems to be motivated by the fact of trying to cut God out of it, right? See his motive, but he's done a lot of obviously excellent work. That being the case, I thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.